theme to that. And I know I'm a little bit early, but I'm on a mission right now, and I'm wanting to reclaim Advent. I want to reclaim Christmas. And as I've been thinking about that, I've got a whole series going out on Facebook and YouTube at the moment. So my mind's been on it. And I thought, there's a journey that I've gone on to experience this. And I realized there are some things that have happened, and there are some things that God shown me, and I want to share them with you today. It's going to be a little bit self-indulgent, so please forgive me. But there's one bit, if the Holy Spirit will help us see this, this is one of the keys to actually literally experiencing God in the daily walk of life. Just now in the worship, I mean, I'm goosebumps, I'm there, and I'm with you guys, and then I'm in the Potter's house, and I'm thinking of Jesus, all these memories, all these experiences, and then the knowledge of God with me right now. They're all coming together. But when you're getting up in the morning, or when you're on the way to work, those feelings aren't necessarily rushing through you. And so what I want to do this morning is to see if we can upgrade our Advent experience. And the other way we could look at this, and that's what I've got on the screen there, is, is this true or not? Either it is or it isn't. And if it is, which it is, we should be in for quite a ride. Now, I want to introduce you to someone here and tell you a bit of my past. I'm so old, by the way, that when I was little, the world was still in black and white. I'm the good-looking chap on the right there. And around this time of year, back in about 1967, yes, there was a world that long ago, my mum took me to the co-op on the Marlows in Hemel Hempstead. And I think it was up on the first floor, we went to see Father Christmas. But you didn't just go and see him. You had to go through this door. And then I got on a rocket ship, and there was 2 lines of 2 seats. So my mum sat next to me, and then the wall shook, and the rocket ship rattled, and we took off, and I saw the stars flying past the windows. And then when we landed just a few seconds later and we came out, I was in Santa's grotto. My mind was completely blown. And he gave me a cheap, horrible toy made in Hong Kong. And then I'm ready for the journey home, but this elf pointed me and my mum to walk the other way, and suddenly we were back in the co-op. It took me years. I mean, I was like 23 when I worked out that it wasn't really a real spaceship. We didn't really fly anywhere. There was a bored teenager turning a wheel because there was no electronics then, and the scene was just moving past. But that and other things really, they gave me a sense of wonder. And when I look at Christians today, and I look at what's going on in the world, and I look at the size of the actual Christmas story, the real Christmas story, we should be actually walking around in a total state of wonder. So I have to wonder why we're not. And again, that's me back in 1969. And it was about then that I started to engage. I hadn't become a Christian. I was a believing unbeliever, but I started to engage with the Christmas story, and I started to think, this is amazing. This is something going on here. But I loved all the other side as well, and I loved the TV and the music and the food, and school was different and home was different, and there was the decorations. I just loved all that stuff. Really, really excited about it. But always behind the scene, there was this story. There was this girl and her husband and a baby and the wise men. And I couldn't escape that. It was there all the time. And I wasn't rejecting it. I liked it. I just couldn't quite join it all together. And then we move on, and I get to, now we're in 1979. I told you this was indulgent, but you'll have to just bear with me. You'll get to know me a bit more. And my family had its trials like everybody else's. Mine weren't nearly as bad as many other people's. But I was starting to really think, there has to be a God. It's logical. And the Christmas that photo was taken, I was laying in bed and I was thinking about death, because I thought about death a lot and I was very scared of death. And then I started to think about the Christmas story, and I started to think, is this true? And I think I started to pray. And I don't know whether I was asleep. I don't know whether I was awake. And I don't think I actually saw the actual thing, but I had an experience. I had an encounter, and I saw the nativity. It was there. And the reason it hit me so hard was it was visceral. It was dusty and it was dirty and there was mud and straw. And I can remember the family being this side and then all the animals were pushed back over there. And even though they were standing in the presence of the baby Jesus, they still did what animals did with a loud plop onto the floor. And that really hit me. And then it was gone. And but here I am, over 10 years later. It is definitely over 10 years, and I can still remember it, and it still impacted me. And I still wasn't a Christian, but it was on my mind. And then come Christmas 1983, you've got that young woman sitting just behind me there, that's Sandra, and we were living as believing unbelievers. We both said there was a God, but it wasn't until August 1984 we had this encounter. And this is one of the reasons I've had to tell you this sort of elongated story. Nobody explained the gospel to us. Nobody said, walk with me down the Roman road. Nobody gave me a really good apologetics argument. Sandra and I, we met God. He came to us, and I'm not boasting. I promise this isn't me better than you, but we were squashed together. Tell you the story another time in an Anglo-Catholic monastery, and suddenly she's weeping and crying with this overwhelming experience of the love of God. And me, I'm convicted to the core that I'm a dreadful sinner and I'm going to hell. But we came out of that changed, and we didn't know we'd been born again. We didn't know the Bible was true. We didn't know anything. We just knew we'd met God, and that stayed with us, and that carried us really probably best part of the next 30 years. Everything I did ran off of that experience, and it was real. The experience was real. It was genuine. But the only way I could get to know God was to go and lock myself in the prayer closet, and we cast out the demons and we healed the sick. We saw people born again on a scale that most people don't have the privilege of experiencing. We worked with the good and the great. But everything I had was I had to have this experience. And that actually makes you very, very vulnerable. And that eventually was, in a sense, if you like, was our undoing or our new beginning, whichever way you want to look at it. But one of the things that kept me held into this until I had that meeting with God, and even then to this day, I love, as soon as we hit Advent, I've got carols playing in my headphones, and I'm talking about, I do listen to Michael Bublé, okay? All right, I admit it. I listen to Michael Bublé. Don't hold it against me. But I also love to play the old stuff because the theology in there is incredible. And look at this. Mild he lays his glory by, born that man no more may die. And I can remember singing that as a kid. He came so I don't have to die. He came so this thing that I'm terrified of, that one day I won't exist, or one day I'll be trapped in a coffin, or one day all these crazy thoughts that go through a kid's head. Suddenly there was this light, there was this hope, and I didn't know what it meant by second birth. But I got that bit, that he came so I didn't have to die. What if that was true? I mean, what if he had actually said, whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live? What if that was true? What would that do to our lives? How would that color our day? How would that shift our frame, change our state, if we actually had this as a reality, that we don't die? Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. All right, okay, no, I'm messing around. But this blows my mind, and I want to tell you why. That's what I want to spend the next 20 minutes and 40 seconds sharing with you. Why does this blow my mind? Where does the Advent come from? What is this? And go on Facebook, watch some of my little videos, because you'll see I'm unpacking more of that there. But the church back in, you go back to say the Middle Ages, there was a church calendar, and the whole community in this country went round that calendar. Why? Because 95%, well, they wanted us to know about Jesus, but also 95% of the world lived in abject, mind-numbing poverty. And I know I've been to Africa many times, and I've been to places that have broken my heart. You have some of you lived there, you've grown up there, and I've been to India and I've seen dead people in the street and things like that. So I've glimpsed a little bit of suffering. I've seen some, but this was people's world. This was how they lived, and what the Advent season did was it gave tremendous hope. And that was the idea of every season, that you live in this horrible, painful, gut-wrenching life, but actually there's something more wonderful. And one day your cruel master, you're going to be standing next to him before God, and he won't be better than you, and you won't be better than him. And the difference maker is going to be how you'd related to Jesus Christ. And so this brought tremendous hope. And all of the stuff we don't understand now in the churches, all the colors and the different things that they put out, and the reason the priest changes their clothes, back then, that meant something to them, and it would have caused a reaction in them, and they would have started to engage with this story. You know, only the most wealthy people owned a book. They didn't have a book, they didn't have a TV, they didn't have a computer or a phone, they didn't have electricity. You know, but they would go to the church and they would think, wow, the virgin gave birth. I am not going to die. There is more to life than this horrible, painful existence that I'm in right now. And I think most of us have lost that. We've become disconnected, and we've understood that God can move now, and we've understood that God wants to touch people in this life. But I think we've done that at a price a lot of the time, that we've got disconnected from the heavenly dimension, that we've got so worried about the Mercedes, we've lost the wonder of the kingdom of heaven. And that's what I want to show you, a way where we can walk with that, where that can be part of our daily experience. So how do we do that? You see, if we keep using the Advent story as our example, Mary's minding her own business one day and Gabriel rocks up. You know, I mean, she'll have heard of Gabriel through, like, for example, from the book of Daniel. She knew who he was. She knew who he represented. And one day she's doing whatever she did in her humble home, and boom, he's standing there in front of her. That's a visitation. She didn't have to lift her hands up. She didn't need Aaron on the keyboard. She didn't have to make a confession. You know, she didn't have to get up every morning and fast and pray. She was just doing what she did, and there's the angel. You can't live like that. And if you try and live like that, it's really dangerous, because you then get caught into experiences and you've got nothing to test that experience against. Because just because an experience is real doesn't mean it's right. There's a whole supernatural realm out there, and we have to be very wise as to which part we get involved in. But so how can I walk? How can I live in an experience and an awareness? Maybe that's the word we should pick up now. An awareness of God, without having to have him keep sending angels and give us dreams and visions and the rest of it. How can I do that? Well, I mean, I do this for a living, so I have an advantage here, but neurology, the way our brain works and the way our brain connects to our mind, you see, your mind is separate from your brain. They're two separate things. The brain is the interface between the invisible and the visible, and your mind can physically change your brain. As you do things with your mind, your brain adapts to match it. And you and I, we're in our mind, and our mind, as far as interfaces through our brain, we've got lots of beliefs. And I've got to be careful not to go down a rabbit path here. And lots of them contradict each other, actually. And a very simple example, we can believe God loves us. We've sung about it. And when you're singing, sometimes you feel it. I definitely did this morning in the praise and worship. But then we could have the thought over here going, I'm unlovable. And our state changes, how we feel changes depending on the environment. So I put my headphones on, I tune in, and then Aaron's at the keyboard and the overwhelming. That's why I'm not the worship leader. And I'm saying, oh God, you love me so much, God. But then I come out of here and then I go and meet some people and then they look at me funny or they don't let me into their group. And then I go into the I'm unlovable bit. And so now I have a completely different experience. So my experience is driven by my thoughts and I move between the different thoughts. And that's when, you need a coach. Okay. That gets a bit more complicated. But whichever thought we focus on, that's the one that wins in the moment. And the one we focus on the most, that's the one that becomes, and some of you are doing the maths now, you've worked out how this works, that then becomes our life experience. And so, I hate having to keep using this, but I can't, if you take somebody like Whitney Houston, who probably one of the most talented people on the planet, and she had the world at her feet and lost her life in such tragic circumstances because her reality, her inner experience of life didn't match what was going on around her. She didn't get the help she needed, so she tried to control it through medication and we lost her. So instead of having somebody mentoring the next generation, instead of perhaps having someone who came back to God in a very real way and then could take all that experience and put it into the next generation, she's gone. Why? Because she didn't know how to create this inner reality, this inner experience that aligned with truth rather than thoughts that aren't necessarily doing her any good. So let's take this a bit further. How do we learn to rejoice? How do we get that experience? How do we walk in a life where actually I'm getting meaning from the things of God? I'm not having to try to keep taking things to make it better. Well, Paul tells us this. He says, always be full of joy in the Lord. Well, all right, Paul, whatever. Thanks. I say it again, rejoice. And I'm sure you know this. When he wrote this is Philippians, the guy's in prison, and that's not a cell with a TV and a shower block. I mean, this is dark, this is horrible. And he's talking about rejoicing. So how are you finding that? Where's that coming from? And we know the Lord visited him, but not he wasn't living face to face with God, and he got beaten up and he got flogged and he got shipwrecked. He got rejected. He had terrible things. And yet, where's this life? Where's this power coming from? Look at verse 6. Don't worry about anything. Hey, it's 2020, Paul. Did you not get the email? Just pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he's done. And now watch this. Then you will experience God's peace. Okay, so actually, if I want to experience God's peace, some things have got to happen here. And I need to somehow learn to rejoice. I've got to stop worrying. I've got to tell God what I need, and then I'll get the peace. Now, I've pastored 2 churches. I've traveled the world preaching the gospel. I know most Christians don't live in peace. And we try and do this bit, but there's something here Paul is assuming that I don't think we've been aware of. Because I want to know that peace that passes anything that we can understand. I want that guarding my mind. How do I get that? Well, we need to learn to think about things differently. We have to learn to choose our thoughts. So this isn't the number one thing I want you to get today, but this one, if you're taking notes, is worth writing down or just get some. You have the privilege. You're a free moral agent. God made you with the ability to think. Animals don't get to choose their thoughts like we do. We get to choose ours. And I want to encourage you to choose your thoughts. So now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts. Wow. Fix them, glue them, nail them down, weld them, whatever you want to say. Fix them on what is true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, admirable. Think about these things. So hang on, I want this joy. I want this peace. I want to know that. And I know I'm jumping a little bit about in the scriptures, but can you see there's a pattern here? I've actually got to take my thoughts and fix them somewhere. Now, if you live on, if you've got the news on all day, if you listen to the lamestream media, they don't want you to fix your thoughts. They want to control your thoughts, and they want to manipulate you and make you go wherever it is they want you to go. They are going to send their clickbait. They're going to use their headlines. They're going to put out their fake news, and they will control you. And that's the plan. And that's what that's always how mankind is, because the world is dark and the world is broken, which is why Jesus came to bring a new creation. So we fix our thoughts. We say, no, I'm not having my thought going that way. Oh, millions of us are going to die. Well, I doubt that. And if I did, I'll be alive anyway. So I'm going to fix my thought over here. Thank you very much. Where's my computer? Stop working. So how do we fix our thoughts? Let's have a new look at meditation. You know this, Joshua chapter 7. Moses is dead and God comes to him. He says, be strong and very courageous. And now this comes up again and again in the Advent story. But isn't that interesting? I'm with you as I was with Moses. We're going to go and defeat the world together. And yet, isn't that amazing? Even though God's with him, he's going to have to be strong and courageous. That means there's going to be opportunities for him to weaken and to back off, even though God's with him in an incredibly powerful way. But he tells him right in verse 8 there, study the book, meditate on it. What does that mean? And I've worked with people before where I've said, can you just stop reading the Bible for a while? And I've worked in secure units where they're working with people with serious mental illnesses, and they love the Bible. Oh my goodness me. And their brains are a soup. It is not funny, and it's really, really tragic. So it's not enough just to stare at the scripture. And if you do a deep dive, and I've got some special software that lets me do that, into that word meditate, you come up with this list, and it's on the photo on the left on your screen. You ponder, you weigh, you compare, you consider. Now, this is the big one. If you want to turn off now, that's fine. Just take with you debate internally. This is crucial. We have to have this internal dialogue, and Christians, we sometimes get cult-like. Christians can become overly religious, and they say, well, I don't want to argue with the Bible. I don't want to disbelieve. So I actually don't think about it. No. You have to have an internal debate, because you have to let those unbelieving thoughts come up. And then they have to come up against the believing thoughts, and whether you want to imagine them in court, presenting their evidence. And I think for me, that works. It's say, okay, Jesus doesn't love you. Don't be so stupid. You're just going to die, and then that'll be it. You'll be dust. And that's the evidence for the prosecution. Okay, now the defense steps up. Well, okay, let's think about that for a second. We are here. Where did we come from? We came from our mothers. If we go all the way back, where did the universe come from? Well, it came from something. Well, if it came from something, where did the something come from? Well, the something had to come from a someone. So obviously there's a God. Okay, well, who could this God be? Well, it's definitely not Allah, and it's definitely, Buddha was just a fat bloke, probably quite nice, but he died. The other religions don't make any sense at all. I'm stuck with Jesus. Well, how do I know Jesus is real? Well, he actually came back from the dead, and that's a historical fact. Oh my goodness me. So I better take anything he says as truth. Now, that was a little bit condensed, but can you see we actually have that debate? And when truth wins the debate, my thoughts shift. And that's crucial. And so this is just a little bit of a repeat. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to move through. As my thoughts shift, my whole world experience changes. You see, what we want to do, all of us, is just feel amazing. That's what we want. If I said to you, you could have £1 billion and feel suicidal every day, or you could just have your needs taken care of, warm, comfy, but feel utterly ecstatic and full of joy and love and praise every moment, which would you choose? Well, unless you need really serious therapy, you're going to go for feeling good. That's why we want the money, because we can do stuff that makes us feel good. So where do the feelings come from? Because obviously rich people kill themselves, so money doesn't do that. It can't be guaranteed. Well, emotions are thoughts in motion. So what happens? I believe something. This belief shapes my thoughts. Those thoughts make me feel something, and the feeling causes me to act. So I believe, I think, I feel, I act. I believe in the virgin birth. This belief shapes thoughts of adoration. These thoughts make me feel awe and wonder, and the feeling causes me to worship. Gabriel did not have to leave the throne room of God. I didn't have to have a visitation. All that happened was my mind caught up with reality. You see, we're not dealing with a fable when we look at the scriptures. We're not dealing with a nice story. We are dealing with reality. We are dealing with truth. And as the more our minds catch up with truth, the more we win these internal debates. And don't pretend you've won it when you haven't. God's not intimidated by this. God's not going, oh, look at you. You're just so horribly unbelieving. No. When we start the debate, when we start the meditate, the debate, the medibate, I don't know, that's when the Holy Spirit can start to move. When we're suppressing, when we're denying, well, we're holding the Spirit back too. But when we just get honest, Lord, help me in my unbelief. Lord, I believe this, but I've got this thought over here. Now the Holy Spirit says, right, let me help you. And maybe in the moment, or maybe he sends a book or a person or a word. But then that journey of belief begins. And the more our thoughts shift, and those unbelieving thoughts are eventually defeated by truth, defeated by logic, our life experience changes, because then we come to live in the light of truth, the light of reality about who God is and what Jesus has done. The gentleman on the left, he's running up and down the streets of glory now, but when he was on earth, he was a mathematician and Christian writer. He's called Peter Stoner, and he did some maths. And he said the Old Testament contains 108 fulfilled messianic prophecies. And then he did the math on the probability of 8 of them being fulfilled in one person. And conservatively, he came up with 1 in 100 quadrillion. Now, that one we bring into the internal debate. I want to present this in evidence. The likelihood of Jesus fulfilling one of the 108 prophecies. Remember, this is history. We can prove this. You know, this isn't something we're making up. You can go and talk to non-Christian scholars who, other than the resurrection and the virgin birth, will go, well, yeah, that, you know, you can believe it like that. That's true. We know that's what history says. We know that's right. We've proven it. So we know Jesus fulfilled these prophecies. 1 in 100 quadrillion? Let that sink into the debate. I'm dealing with truth here. I mean, that's it. What's another word for 1 in 100 quadrillion? Impossible. It's beyond chance. This is real. We're dealing with reality. Now, look, I've just picked a handful here. If these are true, Genesis chapter 3 is going to crush your head. Isaiah 7, the virgin will give birth. Isaiah 9, you know, I've forgotten the other words for the name of land of Galilee, but, you know, they're talking about how Jesus came from Galilee. Isaiah 11, the political state that Israel will be in when the Messiah comes. Jeremiah 31, the slaughter of the innocents. Hosea chapter 11, the Messiah will come out of Egypt, because obviously they had to go out there to escape Herod. Micah, Bethlehem, the place of Messiah's birth. All of these happened. Wow, let's get that internal debate going. Let's get this thing rocking, because when we come to term with these realities, we start to turn into, remember the faith of a child? When you start to develop these realities, I start to get back to that kid with wide-eyed wonder, not because he's going, whoa, I'm on the North Pole, man. But I'm going, whoa, this Jesus thing is real, guys. This is true. No one made this up. This is history. This is fact. This is reality. Now, what do you think is going to happen to my feelings as I believe that? I've got 40 seconds left. I hope you're okay if I take about a minute or so more, because now we're this close. What are we wrestling with? These unbelieving thoughts. Look at what I've put in red there. They'd seen Jesus feed the 5,000. They'd seen him still the waves and stop the wind, but they still didn't understand why. Their hearts were too hard. Is that something we should pray about? I mean, they were there witnessing it, so it shouldn't be surprising that we wrestle too, should it? Because we don't even witness it. How do we handle it? Romans 12:2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Change the way you think. That's the timer going. How do I change the way I think? That's a good question. Shut up, timer. I know. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. What does that mean? You bring it into the debate. You bring it into court. And then we start bringing the Advent story into the court of our thoughts. And we say, is this true? And if it is, should I allow it to affect my feelings? And look at this. Just look at this for a second. 4,000 years of waiting, 400 years of yearning. I don't know what happened there, sorry. 400 years of waiting, 400 years of yearning. And look at this story. I'm not going to read it now for the sake of time. Bring these thoughts to your inner court. Let them win the case. And then you, my friend, you are going to have that wide-eyed wonder and that adoration, and you won't even need an angel to come and visit you. Bless your hearts. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, guys.